Welcome back. I am Ashmit Kumar. Now, Pavel Durov, the billionaire founder of Telegram messaging app, has been detained by French authorities for alleged failures in content moderation. The arrest follows a warrant that alleged that Telegram's lack of moderation has facilitated illegal activities. The Russian embassy in France has demanded that Durov should be granted consular access and that his rights must be upheld. The embassy has claimed that the authorities in France, however, are refusing to cooperate. Telegram has said that its CEO has nothing to hide. Telegram, which has close to 1 billion users, was created by Durov and his brother in 2013 in Russia. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Telegram became the main source of unfiltered and sometimes graphic content from both sides in the war. The application is used extensively by Russian and Ukrainian officials, including Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Several countries in Europe, including France, have raised concerns about the app related to security and data privacy. Well, for more on this, for a discussion on this, we have with us Apar Gupta, co-founder at the Internet Freedom Foundation. Also with us is Rohit Kumar, founding partner at the Quantum Hub. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Apar, coming to you first, very sharp reactions we are seeing, again, ironically, on social media against this arrest. Elon Musk comparing moderation to censorship. Lex Friedman calling this a case of government overreach. And importantly, even Snowden chiming in on this conversation, saying that France has taken a hostage for gaining access to private messages. Do you share some of these concerns? How disconcerting is it when you see a free liberal country in Europe resorting to strong-arm measures?
Thanks for inviting me here, Ashmit. My comments are, as per me being an expert on this issue and not representative of the Internet Freedom Foundation. I think first we need to get a sense of the facts and under which legal provisions France has effected this arrest. As per news reports, it's clear that Mr. Pavlov is actually a French citizen, and also he had outstanding warrants, so he was not complying with the legal processes in France. And we need to remember that there's a rule of law which exists in most European countries, which is better than other countries around the world as per rankings, as well as what they affect and what they provide. Now, when we look at Telegram as an application, it is primarily not a messaging application. It's actually a social media application because you can search for a channel name and you're served with all kinds of content and you're linked to that. It's much more of an open loop app rather than a closed loop communication system. And here, the allegations which are there, and I think do need to be tested in courts of law, include that it allows a facility of sale of contraband items, which include, for instance, drugs, but also it includes guns and armaments. And these are very serious charges. I think even the courts in India, over a period of time, have had issues with how their orders are affected, especially in terms of copyright infringement or in terms of, for instance, how books are shared, how newspapers are shared on a daily basis on Telegram channels. So I think its lack of moderation cannot itself be equated to free speech, which is where the criticism comes from. There is a distinction between what is a moderated online platform, which can be consistent with free speech, and something which is the boundless Wild West, which is a platform such as 8chan, where there is a rampant level of hate speech and misinformation. So there is no, I think the characterization by a lot of the criticism which is coming in seems to be without a level of moderation in itself.
Let's take that across to Mr. Kumar as well. Mr. Kumar, again, just borrowing from some of the examples that Mr. Gupta had shared, where he was talking about that even in a country like India, we do have, in fact, judicial precedents which point out that in case of IP-related violations, there is some room for intervention there. I just want to get from you a perspective on a similar situation here in India. We understand Section 79 of the IT Act grants safe harbor protection, that a platform cannot be equated with a publisher. A platform cannot be punished for posts that are being put out by members of that social media platform. The question I want to get from you is, what happens in case of withdrawal? What are the conditions that meet the statutory sanction for removal of Section 79 safe harbor protection?
So, Ashmit, just building on what Apar was also saying, see, I think, Section 79, of course, I'll come to very quickly, but, the fact that this happened in France, and, while I can understand the concern from a free speech perspective, I think Apar is right that we don't have to be that alarmist that quickly. Ultimately, there are these problems that are being happening, real life problems that are happening because of content on different platforms, and which is increasingly becoming a concern across the globe. In fact, this is a concern that law enforcement have had across. Even most recently, in the UK, for instance, a lot of misinformation around the riots that happened really were sort of originating and spreading on Telegram. In India, we've had similar things. For instance, we've had the NEET paper leak. We've had, in fact, Boom Live had done a story in July about CSAM content on some of these platforms and how it is going unchecked. And Telegram even allows groups of 200,000 plus people being created. And in these kinds of setups, you are essentially having a platform where it's not just about speech; it's also about setting the narrative in a public setting. And there is when the safe harbor construct kind of comes in. Safe harbor construct essentially means that platforms should not be held liable for the kind of content that users are putting in, but that doesn't mean that there cannot be legal requirements on how you design the platform or what kind of processes you put in place to keep the platform safe. And I think that is something that is really important. And in the Indian context, the government has frequently taken to threatening the removal of safe harbor, which basically
Sure.
means that platforms will then become liable for what's happening. But the underlying genesis of all of this is that there is a lot of real world societal harm that is coming out because of the kind of reach that platforms have. And we need better systems to be able to control this, and how you design the platform, what processes
Right.
you put in place can
Mr.
have
Kumar,
huge.
I'll just come in with a supplementary question that the fact that there needs to be more moderation, I think, is something where various stakeholders will be in agreement. The question, however, here is the nature of penal action taken, which is the arresting of a C-suite leader. That, I think, is something that has sparked concern, which is the same question I want to put to you as well, that is this a watershed moment where when a free democratic country in Europe can do it, perhaps that sets a precedent for other countries which may not be as free to be even more non-negotiable in terms of seeking access to private messages that you and I may be sharing?
I share that concern, and while you're right that this is perhaps somewhat worrying, to be honest, I do not know the exact specifics of this particular case to be able to see, compare it with what you see under IT rules, etc. In our conversations, however, with government and different stakeholders, what we've often found told, and I'm giving you the government perspective, this is not something that I necessarily agree with, is that sometimes penalties, etc., and other kinds of measures don't seem to be working, and then governments tend to resort to this kind of arrest to sort of create a pressure for compliance. Having said that, when this happens in a country where rule of law is weak, and citizen guarantees and rights, fundamental rights, are not very guaranteed, this can open
Sure.
a completely different ball of worms, right? So but it needs to be seen in that context as well. Ideally, you should have investigations done.
Sure.
You should have non-criminal penalties imposed on platforms, and
Sure.
that should suffice.
Sure. I'm running out of time here, unfortunately. Let me take that across to Apar as well. Mr. Gupta, is that a concern that you share as well? That it could open a Pandora's box in terms of what is seen as par for course from a regulatory standpoint, that if Europe is doing it, if France can do it, we can be even more forceful. Not we as in India, but other countries which may not be as free can be even more forceful in seeking access to private messages.
So, Ashmit, if you had put me this question, let's say about 8 months ago, I would have said yes, because you would have yourself seen on Twitter, certain reactions would have come from certain ministers on Twitter, and it would have been fairly, vibrant in terms of that debate being very actionable towards what's happening in India. But what you notice is a complete silence. And I think that is a good studied silence. We should not draw lessons even when we do not know the clear instruction which is being provided by France. So let the facts come out clearly. Okay, let Mr. Pavel avail all kind of
Sure.
remedies which are there for him in the French legal system. And I hope that those remedies are taken by him. But I think it is premature for us to draw any analogy to what is happening in India. There is societal
Sure.
harm which results from platforms. There is also benefit which happens through platforms. We have an intermediaries law which clearly exempts their liability. But as Rohit was saying, much needs to be done, and content moderation does need to be done in a way. There can't be an excuse saying that there's absolute free speech and then that promotes any kind of hate
Right.
speech targeting of minorities and doxing.
So an interesting take there coming in from both of our panelists. Perhaps more details are awaited from France before we can take a final view on the subject. But I'd like to thank both of our panelists for shedding more light, giving us more color on how to look at this arrest of the Telegram CEO. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. More news and updates will continue right here.